Is it possible within our cultural clashes at the moment for people who feel they're constantly surrendering territory actually to do things which start to inch back a little bit? In this case, OK, we're seeing various assaults upon the memory of Winston Churchill. Actually, let's have a national day honouring him, just like in America there's a Martin Luther King Day.
Yeah, I don't see any reason why not. I think perhaps a better way to do it is to not take a sort of antagonistic stance, but to sort of say, OK, if you want to have those conversations about the things that Churchill said and did, let's have them. Because when you have the conversations properly and talk about historical context, you start to realise that actually the views that he had, although by our standards we wouldn't find them acceptable, were not atypical of the time, were they? So, and that's the key issue. If you had a statesman today who was talking about the superiority of certain races, we'd all have a problem with it, and we'd all take them to task, and we wouldn't stand for it. But if someone of Churchill's time saying that, at a time when it wasn't considered controversial, then what's the point in sort of holding him to the standards that we hold people today? It doesn't actually make sense.
That point really came home to me probably more than 20 years ago now. I was at a South African Boer War battlefield, Spion Kop,
yes,
which of course gave its name then to various Spion Kops,
at
Anfield and elsewhere. At that single battle, there was Winston Churchill as a young British Army officer. There was Jan Smuts, who went on to lead the South African nation, as it was then incarnated, and a young Mahatma Gandhi, who was there as a medical orderly. And if you look at some of Gandhi's views,
same thing. Some of his views on African people was, by our standards, horrific, and that's why, incidentally, some people have called for his statue to be taken down. I think in Manchester, that is. So, so again, we are faced with this problem again of failing to contextualise these historical figures, which doesn't really make sense. If we have a Churchill Day, it's not going to be a day to celebrate every last thing the man ever said or did. It's going to be predominantly about him beating Hitler, isn't it? I mean, that's...
Do you know what it mustn't be, Andrew? What it mustn't be, that dreadful phrase that you hear increasingly now, peddled by people who are not actually particularly tolerant. Educate yourself. I'm not suggesting anybody educates themselves about Winston Churchill.
Do you know what? If anyone who uses that phrase, they never read books. That's the first thing. They are the least qualified to tell anyone else to educate themselves, because they don't know about history. And the idea that they've got this sense that they can live a life of complete moral purity and that they won't be judged by future generations for the standards that they currently hold, it's completely historically illiterate and myopic. And it's actually quite funny in a way. But I think this idea, I find it really troubling for a number of reasons. But we lose out so much when we stand here in this high-handed way and denigrate the past because they're not the same as us. I mean, to give an example, one of my favourite novelists is the suffragette writer Stella Benson. And one of her early novels, it's called I Pose, has racialised language and depictions of different races that absolutely we would find abhorrent. I mean, even when I was reading, I was thinking, oh, this is a bit much. Yeah. But it was totally uncontroversial at the time. Yeah. But as a result of that now, this is a novelist who we've lost. We could never reintroduce her now, even though she was just a genius, because of those elements of her...
You know what, Andrew? I just want people to look at Churchill's life.
Yeah, right.
Because actually, it was the most extraordinary life. I mean, I forgot, there's so much about his life you forget.
Yeah.
I mean, after the Gallipoli, the disaster of Gallipoli, he just went to the trenches.
Right.
And served as, I think he was a colonel with the Scottish regiment in the trenches.
Exactly.
He put himself on the line and risked his life, nearly died in the trenches. He was in his 50s, for heaven's sake.
But people want to reduce him to just certain aspects of his life that they
well, the Nobel Prize for Literature.
Right.
What was it he did on pensions and social security? I mean, I know clearly, it's such a mixed picture, but it's the most varied picture, the most extraordinary human mosaic that one life story can tell. And to dismiss him, as the people who run a primary school in Richmond, South West London, did the other week, and replacing him with either, I don't know who it was, Marcus Rashford or
I think they replaced
Mary Seacole.
J.K. Rowling, and it was J.K. Rowling and Winston Churchill. They replaced with Mary Seacole and Marcus Rashford, and of course because they're just thinking in terms of identity politics. That's all they're thinking about, and that again reduces everything to this simplistic view of history. And every life is complex. And it's not to suggest that we don't currently disapprove of some of the things that he would have said, because of course we do, inevitably, because of the time in which we are born. But had we all been born in Churchill's time, actually, had these activists who want to remove his name been born in Churchill's time, I can pretty much guarantee they would share a lot of his views that they currently find repugnant. So, they're not really in a position to judge.